Thank you for joining us in today's Connection Point End Times News Briefing podcast, and I hope you're all doing fantastic and having a wonderful and blessed day. As each week goes by, I'm always amazed of how quickly things are speeding up prophetically, and as we see things developing and happening, it's happening at such an intense rate, especially as things are approaching toward the elections this year. Just so many things are in the balance on what happens and the outcome of it. But no matter what, the key for us is to stay focused on the Lord, knowing that He is in control, that He is sovereign. He's already told us how everything's going to turn out as we read through the Bible and read through the book of Revelation. And so we have hope and we have confidence today. Amen. Now, in looking at the briefing today, there's a couple interesting items to bring to your attention. Starting off with Israel. Rockets fired from Gaza at southern Israel. IDF retaliates with strikes. So this came out of the Times of Israel, how the Palestinian terrorists in Gaza Strip fired a rocket at Israel late Monday, and the army said without reporting any casualties or damages. Sirens sounded in the areas in southern Israel, neighboring Gaza, to warn of incoming fire, which there was no claim of responsibility. The army said that the projectiles likely fell into an open area. Hours later, the army said that the Israeli Defense Force aircraft struck a Hamas military installation in southern Gaza Strip in retaliation for rockets fired, and so there was no immediate report of casualties yet. The last cross-border rocket attack, which Israel retaliated with air raids, came on September 15th last month, coincides with the signing of the Washington normalization between the Jewish state and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. A truce mediated by Qatar has since held. During the previous barrage last month, the 15 rockets were fired from the Gaza at Israel, one that struck the city of Ashdod, injuring 2 people. Most of the rockets were intercepted by the Iron Dome. That rocket fire represents the first attack since an unofficial ceasefire agreement was reached between Israel and the terrorist groups in the Strip late August, and the latest barrage since February, and it drew retaliatory strikes from Israel. So this is something that's unfortunate that Israel has to face and deal with on a regular basis, the constant attacks from all over, not only from Hezbollah, Hamas, the Palestinians, and then the threat of attacks from Iran and other surrounding countries. But Israel, as we know biblically, is going to continue to prevail, and they're going to stand through it all. So no matter what these countries and terrorist groups throw at Israel, Israel will continue to stand the test of it all. On to a separate and different interesting article. There was one that came out of the Brett Bart report that talks about Pope Francis calls for giving United Nations organization real teeth. So Pope Francis makes his best case for multilateralism in a new teaching letter, calling for more authority of supranational organizations like the United Nations. He goes on to say in this particular article that the 21st century is witnessing a weakening of the power of the nation states, chiefly because of the economic and financial sectors being transnational trends to prevail over the political, the Pope writes in this particular letter, as we mentioned. Given the situation, it's essentially to devise stronger and more efficient, organized international institutions with functionalities who are appointed fairly by the agreement among the national governments empowered to impose sanctions, the Pope says, and advised in this 43,000-word text. So in regard to this, again, he would go on to say that the need to reform of the United Nations organizations, likewise the economic institution and international finance, so that the concept of family of nations can acquire real teeth or more power. power to do what they want to do on this globalization scale. The work of the United Nations, the Pope insisted, can be seen as the development and promotion and rule of law based on the realization that justice is an essential condition for achieving the ideal of universal fraternity. So it's really the global control. If you're not going to bow down to their agenda, then there's going to be serious consequences. But with this particular ideology that the Pope is proposing here, you see it exactly playing out as the multi-headed beast that the woman rides in Revelation chapter 17, the religious system control of the world as well as the political system of control. And of course, you've observed over the years of how Pope Francis hates open and free societies that run on the free and fair exchange of goods and services created by the private sector and what we also call capitalism. According to Associated Press report, says that Pope Francis says that the coronavirus pandemic has proven that the magic theories of market capitalism have failed and that the world needs a new type of political or politics that promotes and dialogues solidarity and rejects war at all cost. So what system would the Pope prefer? Socialism, communism, or just the globalization of a global government that's led by the false prophet and the Antichrist, as we'll eventually see? Whether the Pope is that false prophet, we don't know. But it is interesting to see his notoriety and agenda continue to come through. On a separate subject, there's an article that came out, quite a few different news postings, but it was just the information that came out of the CDC information and the World Health Organization. But there's the report that talks about the new the World Health Organization estimates that puts the coronavirus death rate at only 0.13%. So, lost in the reporting of the World Health Organization new estimate, about 760 million people, more than 20 times the confirmed cases, have been infected by the coronavirus worldwide as the impact of the estimate survival rate. If indeed, which is it's a high number, 760 million have been infected at some point during the outbreak, the number of confirmed deaths is about 1 million. The infection fatality rate is only 0.13%. That's a little more than 0.1%, which the WHO says is the rate about the seasonal flu. The WHO's estimate in March, the death rate was 3.4%, sparked worldwide panic, fueling the catastrophic lockdowns, which many of us are still, unfortunately, in these stupid lockdowns, all unnecessarily. But the rate of 3.4% is more than 26 times higher than the rate of 0.13%. The Associated Press reported on Monday that Dr. Michael Ryan, speaking in a special session of the WHO's COVID-19 board, says figures vary from urban to rural areas. But ultimately, he said, it means that the vast majority of the world remains at risk. Many deaths have been averted and many more lives can be protected. He goes on to say that our current best estimates tell us about 10% of global population may have been infected by this virus. The AP noted that estimates far outstrips the number of confirmed cases counted by both the WHO and the Johns Hopkins University, more than 35 million worldwide. WHO spokesman said that 10% estimate is based on an average of antibody studies conducted around the world. Meanwhile, there's a study that was done by researchers at Wayne State University in Michigan found that COVID's severity may be fading as the death rates falls. In August, the New York Times found in an analysis of data that up to 90% of people testing positive carried barely any virus. The Times reporter summarized the story on Twitter, saying all these months into pandemic, we may have been testing the wrong way. Data from some states' labs suggest that 90% of people who get a positive results are no longer contagious and don't need to isolate. Last month, we even mentioned that the Center for Disease Control issued a new estimates that showed people under 50 years in age infected by COVID have nearly 100% survival rate. It broke down to 99.997% survival rate for ages 0 to 19. For ages 20 through 49, there's a 99.98%. And then in ages of 50 through 69, there's a 99.5% chance of survival. And then 94.6 for those over 70. So it's not as drastic as many claim it to be, but this is what science is telling us, the statistics, the data. So why are the nations around the world still in panic mode? Why the big obsession with wearing masks? Why can't businesses get open and get going again, and opening the schools? And why are churches still, more importantly, not able to meet? Why are they still being closed? Because of the government regulations. Why all this nonsense? It's for nothing. And when you look at the science and when you look at the data. But again, we'll see what happens once the election's over. As many say, things will be changing after that. Perhaps, just as a thought, that this could be a whole global setup system to try to stop President Trump. I wouldn't be surprised to see the globalists and the Democrats go that far with their anti-Trump agenda, and just to get someone else in there that goes with the globalist system to get what they want. But that's just a thought. It's a conspiracy, I know, but wouldn't be surprised. Now, regardless of what's going on, we need to keep pressing on and make the best, make the most of what we can do in front of us. Amen? That's it for today's update. Until next time, may the Lord radically and outrageously bless you.